He said he was in Chicago for work. Another late-night meeting, another week of long-distance calls and half-hearted "I miss yous." I didn't question it at first. I never did. That's what trust looks like, right? Believing the person you love without needing proof. But that night, something felt different. His voice sounded lighter, distracted, like his attention was somewhere else entirely. And then I heard it, the faint pulse of music in the background. Not the kind you'd hear in a restaurant or lobby. This was loud, messy, alive, like a party. I frowned. "Where are you?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. He hesitated for just a second too long. Then came the lie, smooth, practiced, confident. "Oh, just out with the team after meetings. You know how these work trips go." Except I didn't know. Because behind that sentence, I could still hear the music. And then, clear as day, a woman's laughter. Soft. Familiar. Close enough to make my stomach twist. In that moment, everything inside me went still. It was like my mind finally caught up to what my heart had been whispering for months. He wasn't in Chicago for work. He wasn't sitting in some conference room or networking dinner. He was somewhere else, with someone else. And I remember sitting there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to breathe, trying to sound normal, while realizing that the life I thought I was building wasn't real at all. My name is Claire, and I'm 28 years old. This is the story of how my fiancé's work trip turned into his biggest mistake, and my greatest escape. If you've ever silenced that small voice in your head, the one that whispered something isn't right, just because you wanted to believe the person you loved would never hurt you, then this story is for you. Because I get it. I know what it's like to give someone every ounce of your trust, only to find out they were using it as a cover for their lies. What you're about to hear isn't just about betrayal. It's about awakening. It's about what happens when the truth finally hits, and you decide to stop breaking yourself to protect someone who never cared enough to protect you. So if you've ever been lied to, gaslit, or made to feel like you were crazy, stay with me. This isn't just another heartbreak story. It's one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll ever hear. Because karma doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't send warnings. It just waits for the right moment to strike. Ryan and I had been together for 5 years. 5 years of shared routines, inside jokes, and quiet mornings that felt like home. We'd been engaged for 3 months away from our wedding day. At that point, I truly believed I was walking into my forever. Ryan was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. He was confident in that easy, effortless way that drew people in. He had a steady job, a calm smile, and a voice that could make any bad day feel manageable. My parents adored him. My friends trusted him completely. And I loved him so much that the thought of losing him almost felt impossible. So when he told me he had to travel for a project meeting, just a quick business trip for work, I didn't think twice. He said it so casually, tossing it out while packing his laptop and checking his watch, like it was nothing new. "It's just 3 days," he'd said, pressing a kiss against my forehead. "Don't worry. I'll call you when I land." I smiled, told him to be safe, and watched him walk out the door, completely unaware that it would be the last time I'd ever look at him the same way. That night, I kept checking my phone, waiting for that simple message, "Landed safely." But it never came. At first, I brushed it off. He'd said the schedule was tight, that he'd be in meetings right after landing. But as the hours stretched into midnight, that familiar ache of worry began to creep in, not loud, just a quiet unease sitting at the edge of my thoughts. By the time I climbed into bed, staring at the empty side where he should have been, I told myself I was just being paranoid. He was busy. He was tired. Everything was fine. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. The next night, I sent him a simple text. How's the trip going? Did the meeting go well? An hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. By the time my phone finally lit up, it was well past midnight. Long meetings. Exhausted. Talk tomorrow. That was it. No goodnight. No call. No warmth. Just a cold, detached message from the man who used to text me a dozen times a day just to say he missed me. The next morning, I woke up to silence again. No call. No update. Nothing. My stomach tightened in that quiet, gnawing way it does when your instincts start whispering before your mind can catch up. I tried to talk myself down, told myself he was probably buried in work, or maybe his phone died, or maybe I was being one of those anxious fiancés who overthink everything. But the thing about intuition? It doesn't need evidence to speak, it just needs a reason to stir. That evening, I sat on the couch, staring at the clock, waiting for it to hit a reasonable hour where it wouldn't seem desperate to call. When he finally did call, just after midnight, his voice came through the line too light, too casual. Hey babe, he said, a little too cheerfully. Sorry, it's been crazy here. Meetings ran late. Behind him, I heard it. The faint pulse of music. Not background noise from a hotel lobby, no. This was louder, messier, almost like a club or a party. And somewhere in the middle of it, a woman's laughter cut through the static. I froze. My fingers went numb around the phone. That music, I asked softly, trying to keep my voice steady. Where are you right now? He hesitated, just long enough to give himself away, then let out a half laugh. Oh, this? Just the hotel bar. Some co-workers wanted to unwind. You know how it is. But his tone was off. It was the laugh of someone caught off guard, fumbling for a story. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. So I said goodnight, told him to get some rest, and hung up. But long after the call ended, I sat there in the dark, phone still in my hand, heart pounding. Because no matter how much I tried to silence it, that tiny persistent voice inside me was already whispering the truth. Something wasn't right. And deep down, I already knew it. The next morning, I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. My eyes were swollen from another sleepless night, and my chest felt heavy, like I was holding my breath for something that wasn't coming. So I called Lena, my best friend since college, the one person who could read me before I said a word. She showed up within an hour, still in her oversized hoodie, hair in a bun, carrying 2 coffees like she already knew I'd need both. The moment she saw me, she frowned. Okay, she said, putting the cups down. What's wrong? You've got that haunted look again. I tried to smile, but it came out crooked. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing. Ryan's been acting weird lately. Define weird, she said, arms crossed, leaning forward. So I told her everything, the late-night calls, the unanswered texts, the music in the background that didn't sound like any hotel lobby I'd ever been in. And then I mentioned the faint trace of perfume on his jacket from the night before his trip, a scent that wasn't mine. Lena went quiet for a second, then said softly, Claire, if your gut is screaming, stop covering its mouth. Her words hit harder than I expected. Because deep down, I knew she was right. I'd spent months dismissing that voice inside me, the one that noticed the subtle shifts in tone, the new distance in his hugs, the way his phone never left his hand anymore. I took a deep breath. So what do I do? Just accuse him? She shook her head. No. Find out. You deserve the truth, not another story. That night, I sat alone on the couch, the glow of the TV flickering against the walls, untouched dinner sitting cold on the table. Ryan's tablet was on the coffee table, the one he always used to check in for flights and stream shows. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I wasn't the kind of person who snooped. I believed in trust. But trust only works when both people are playing fair, and something told me he wasn't. So I opened it. Just one click, and everything I thought I knew about my life started to unravel. The house was quiet when I opened the tablet again later that night. It was one of those silences that felt almost heavy, like the walls were holding their breath with me. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just needed reassurance, proof that my paranoia was wrong. But what I found ended everything. His email was still logged in. Dozens of unread messages from coworkers, promotions, meetings, all normal. And then there it was. One new notification sitting at the top of the screen. A travel confirmation. I clicked. Flight to Miami. Not Chicago. For a second, I couldn't move. My hand froze on the screen. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I reread the line over and over, hoping I'd misread it. But it didn't change. It was right there, black and white, proof of a lie. My chest tightened, my pulse echoing in my ears. Miami. Why Miami? His company didn't have a single client there. There was no conference, no meeting, no reason. Except one. I felt my throat go dry as a single horrifying thought took shape. There was someone else. I didn't want to believe it. I opened Instagram, maybe to distract myself, maybe to find some normalcy. But the universe has a cruel sense of timing. The first thing that popped up was a story from a woman I didn't recognize. Her profile was public, bright colors, vacation pictures, poolside drinks. And then I saw that photo. She was lying by a pool, sunlight glinting off her sunglasses, a cocktail in her hand. The caption read, "Weekend getaway with my favorite man, 2 hearts." My blood ran cold. I zoomed in, my heart hammering so loud I could barely think. In the reflection of her sunglasses, clear as day, Ryan, laughing, shirtless, holding a drink. The same man who told me he was freezing in Chicago just hours earlier. My stomach turned. It felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me, and I was falling through every moment I'd ever trusted him. Every promise. Every "I love you." All of it, lies. I sat there staring at the screen, tears blurring the image until it became nothing but colors. That single photo burned itself into my memory, not just because of what it showed, but because, in that moment, something inside me broke. And something else woke up. 2 days later, he walked through the door as if nothing had happened. There was a brightness in his voice, that fake kind of charm he used whenever he needed to smooth things over. He was holding flowers. My favorite kind. As if petals could erase lies. "Hey babe," he said, grinning like the perfect fiancé. "Miss me?" I smiled, calm and collected, maybe too calm. "Of course," I said, stepping closer and kissing his cheek. It wasn't forgiveness. It was strategy. "How was Chicago?" I asked lightly. He didn't even flinch. "Cold," he said, with that easy grin that used to make my heart melt. "Not this time." I smiled back, just as soft. Miami looked warmer. His eyes flickered, only for a second, but it was enough. That split second where his mask cracked told me everything I needed to know. He froze, blinked, then forced a laugh. "Miami? What are you talking about?" I shrugged, walking past him. Just something I saw online. The silence that followed was delicious. He didn't ask any more questions, and I didn't offer any answers. For the first time, I had the upper hand, and he didn't even realize it. That night, I lay beside him, listening to his steady breathing as he slept. He looked peaceful, maybe even innocent, like he hadn't just shattered my world. But I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. I started small. Quietly. I opened a new savings account, tucked away every bit I could. Stopped spending on the wedding. Stopped checking in on him. Stopped caring about what he thought. Every action was deliberate. Every word was measured. He thought my silence meant forgiveness. It didn't. It meant freedom. I began moving my things out piece by piece. A jacket here. A few books there. I told him I was decluttering, and he actually praised me for it. "I love this new version of you," he said once, smiling. I smiled back. He had no idea that version of me was preparing to leave him behind. I reconnected with old friends, people he'd subtly distanced me from. I met with my sister and quietly stored boxes at her place. I started looking for apartments, small, affordable, but mine. And with every step, I felt lighter. The fear that had lived in my chest for months began to fade. Because now, I wasn't the woman waiting for an apology. I was the woman writing her own ending. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just planned. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, patient, and perfectly timed. A week later, I told Ryan I had a surprise for him. His favorite restaurant, the same one where he'd proposed to me under twinkling lights a year ago. I made the reservation under my name. I even wore the same dress from that night. Everything about it was intentional. Because if he could lie with a smile, I could end things with one. When he walked in, he was carrying another bouquet, lilies this time. He smiled like nothing had ever gone wrong. "Wow," he said, letting his gaze linger. "You look amazing." "Thanks," I said softly. "You too." We sat down. He ordered wine. He started talking about work, pretending everything was normal. It was almost laughable, how easily he slipped into that fake charm. After a few minutes, I reached into my purse and slid an envelope across the table. His brow furrowed. "What's this?" "Something I wanted you to see," I said. He opened it, still smiling, at first. Then his expression changed. The color drained from his face as he pulled out each page. Flight confirmations, hotel bookings, screenshots of Instagram stories, and that one damning photo, the reflection of him in another woman's sunglasses. He looked up at me, panic starting to flicker in his eyes. "Claire," he said, voice breaking just slightly, "I can explain." I tilted my head, calm, almost amused. "Don't." The word came out steady, controlled. For once, I wasn't shaking. "You lied to me," I said quietly. "You lied to her. And honestly, I'm just tired of hearing you talk." He blinked, stunned. His hand reached across the table, desperate. "Please, Claire, don't do this here. People are watching." I smiled. "Exactly." He froze, that same expression I'd imagined 100 times. The perfect mixture of guilt, shame, and disbelief. I stood up slowly, took off my engagement ring, that sparkling reminder of every promise he'd already broken, and placed it neatly on the table between us. "You don't get to humiliate me in private and walk away clean," I said. "So I figured we'd balance the scales." Then I turned and walked away. The entire restaurant seemed to fall silent. I could feel eyes on me, some curious, some sympathetic, but I didn't care. Behind me, I heard him whisper my name once, then again softer, like he didn't know who he was without my forgiveness. I didn't look back. Not once. Because for the first time in years, I didn't owe him an explanation. I owed myself peace. The days that followed were strangely quiet. No more constant buzzing of messages. No more pretending to be okay in a house that had stopped feeling like home long before I admitted it. He called, of course. At first, his voice trembled, full of apologies, promises, desperate bargains. Then came the anger, the insults, the guilt-tripping. I listened to none of it. Silence became my new form of power. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of town, 1 bedroom, creaky floors, a window that faced the sunrise. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. No reminders of him. No ghosts of who I used to be. For the first few nights, I cried, not for him, but for the version of myself that had tolerated less than she deserved. Then, slowly, the crying stopped. I started running again. At first, just a few blocks, then miles. With every stride, I felt lighter, like I was outrunning the lies that had once trapped me. I cut my hair shorter, donated half my wardrobe. Each little change was a rebellion, a small way of saying I'm back. And then one morning, life decided to test me. I was in line at my favorite coffee shop, sweat from my runs still drying on my skin, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Claire. I turned. Ryan. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. The confidence he used to wear like armor was gone. His eyes had that tired, restless look of someone haunted by consequences. You look different, he said, trying to smile. I feel different, I replied simply. He nodded, as if searching for something to say, but there was nothing left. No anger. No sadness. Just distance. And as I walked out, coffee in hand, I realized something. Freedom doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It comes quietly, like a deep breath after years of holding it in. And that first sip of coffee that morning? It tasted like peace. If this story made your heart race, or maybe just reminded you of your own strength, take a second and hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about heartbreak, truth, and the quiet kind of healing that changes everything. And I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments. What was your moment? The exact moment you looked at someone and realized they didn't deserve you anymore? Because that realization, that quiet, powerful clarity, isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning. Sometimes the best revenge doesn't come wrapped in anger or payback. It comes in peace, in rebuilding yourself, in rising from what was meant to break you and turning it into something beautiful. So here's to you. To every person who's ever had their heart broken and still found the courage to love themselves again. Because in the end, that's the real victory. Not watching them fall, but finally watching yourself rise.